Denise Harlow with the partnership. Let's go ahead and turn on the video camera as well. May already be on. Okay. We're getting our technology here in order. Great. Okay. Hi, Community Action. Glad you're with us here today. I know it's different times in different time zones, so it's not quite good afternoon for all of you. But we are thrilled to have with us today Jeannie Chaffin, the Director of the Office of Community Services, Janae Bailand, Executive Director of NASCAS, and I'm Denise Harlow here at Community Action Partnership. We are recording today's session, just so you know, so the verbal stuff will all be recorded and posted up online. I believe that we will be carving off the chat window and the Q&A window will not show on the recording, but I don't say that to, you know, we want to encourage conversation today. Today's presentation isn't really a presentation, it is a discussion. It's a Q&A, it's kind of office hours for the network on all of these components of the CSBG performance management system, specifically targeted on the proposed CSBG annual report. Many of you were with us yesterday when we walked through a number of the components of the CSBG annual report. Even more of you were with us last week when we kind of did a broad overview of the entire package. I'm hoping that a number of you have already watched, and if you haven't, you will go and watch them soon, the 4 30-minute webinars that are posted up on the NASCAS website. Today's webinar and the ones we've had so far that have been live Q&A pieces like this have not done the deep dive. Nobody wants to be on a 3-hour webinar at any point in time in our lives, but those 30-minute webinars are meant to give you a deep dive into what each of these 4 modules are. So if you have not watched them, I hope that you will do so soon. And today's meeting is just that. It's supposed to be a conversation. Now, we have a few questions that we did get sent in advance, which are very helpful. I hope that you will put questions into the Q&A window. You can also put them in the chat window, but the Q&A window for us is a little bit easier to grab. And we will do our best to pause periodically here and take your questions. If we end early, we end early. No one's here saying we have to be here for the full hour, but we wanted to make sure the network had a chance to dialogue directly with all of us prior to the November 30th is the deadline for comments to be submitted. So we'll have a few other opportunities maybe, but today's really the date where you're going to have a chance to ask any of us a question. Jeannie or Janae, anything you'd like to add to kick us off?
No, I just would really want to thank NASCAS and the partnership for joining OCS and making sure that everyone out in the field has plenty of opportunity to digest this annual report. I've said from the beginning that this report will be as strong as all of the engagement we all put into it. And, you know, we have great wisdom out in the field. And the comments that we've received each time have made for a stronger annual report that I think really makes our network stronger overall and in the long term. So I hope folks are beginning to get ready to type in questions, and we'll get started with some questions that came in yesterday and in between yesterday's webinar and today. So.
And I will also say we have Barbara Mooney on the call as well, who can offer insight. You can't do anything, Roma, without saying Barbara Mooney. So she is on, as well as is Lauren Cook from NASCAS behind the scenes, who has been just a wonderful contributor. We could not be doing this work without Lauren and all of her behind the scenes stuff on all of this. So thank you, Lauren, for being with us as well. You probably know this is better, a lot of us, than me, certainly. With that, and I would give Janae a chance to talk, but we're conserving her voice today. Is that an honest reflection? Okay.
I do want to say, don't be shy. Please, please take this opportunity. We're here to answer questions, but we want to receive questions. So please don't hesitate to send them in and let us know anything that you're feeling or you're hearing from the network, anything that you think is great as well. That's always good to hear, as well as any concerns.
Okay. Great. When I see questions are coming in, which is fantastic, let me start with some of these that have come in since yesterday's webinar, and we will then turn to the big screen. When will that first report be due? There are some concerns about, we talk about timing, right? We have module 1. You know, what's the phase-in schedule? And I think we might actually have a slide that we want to share that will help walk us through some of that. Should we go ahead and pull that slide up to try to get to the timeline question right off the bat?
I think that's good. While we pull that up, and I think Janae can do a great job of walking us through that, but before we do that, I just want to say that, you know, as somebody who was at a local community action agency when I started my career, has worked at the state office and now at the national level, it was really important for us to be very thoughtful about how we phase all this new reporting in. I think there were times in my career where I said to you, Janae, when we were, I was at the state and you were at NASCAS, we can't change our systems that fast. You got to give us more lead time. So we do have a phased-in process, and it is strategically designed to accommodate agencies getting their new data elements implemented into their system. So do you want to give us a little overview of that phase-in?
I do. So what you see on your screen right now is that because CSBG is a block grant and you're allowed to choose your program period, there are 3 traditional periods that we have. The first one you'll see is July through June. We only have 6 states that have chosen this. These are the states that we've actually heard the most concern about, because when we talk about their annual report being due March 31st, 2019, that if you follow this, this would start, that you would actually start collecting information July 1st, 2017, so this July. Which you've heard Jeannie say, she understands, and OCS understands, that that might be a little too soon for these states to actually start reporting that there's going to be a phased-in approach. Some people are geared up and ready to go, but it's not going to be across the board. So if you look at your column, you'll see what are the different reporting periods. You'll also be able to find on the NASCAS website specifically what your state says. Now, the easy answer is that right now, the proposed implementation is that the state would report in Module 1, just Module 1 and just the states, this March 2017. So that's the earliest, and then everything else, all of the other local agency reports, will be what you do in the CSBG-IS. Then for the next go-around, March 31st, 2018, that we still have the states being reported, as well as we might have some people who are able to report the new processes, but really because we know you have to change your data collection system, not as much as with the previous packets, I would say, that this is actually quite similar to what you're collecting, but you still have some new demographics to add, that you have to change that and then collect it for a year before you can actually report that. And so I think that that's been one of the greatest benefits that we've had in having somebody like Jeannie in her position to really lead this effort and say you can't change overnight and expect to have that data. So 2 questions that we have. What's going to happen with the IS? After March 31st, 2019, there's not going to be an IS anymore. It's all going to be reported in the CSBG annual report in OLDC, which is a nice little acronym, Online Data Collection System. It's what the states report for their state plans. That during the phasing report, we are going to keep the access database because that's the way that you're going to collect it. But then after that, it's going to be replaced. And what we've said before is that this packet is so similar to the IS that you shouldn't have any concerns about that going away. It's just going to be a different way of doing the reports. And what I'm really excited about, that I don't think we've talked about enough, is that because it's going to be on an internet-based system, I've been wanting to get rid of that database since I started at NASCAS 11 years ago, we're going to be able to create a public-facing website based off of that information that you'll be able to really pull some great data dashboards, be able to chart things out, have better management and analysis tools, similar to what Lighting is doing, but it's going to be easier for you to be able to see what you're doing and be able to tell your story. And so we're excited about that process.
Great. And be clear, right? So the IS is being subsumed in and will go away.
Yes. It'll go
March of 2019, is that what I heard you say? It'll no longer exist.
Yep. The March 2019 report will be fully entered into OLDC. The access database will be gone.
And so when agencies report to their state in that process, can you back into a time when that would be? Will it be invisible to the local agencies, or is that primarily a state issue?
One of the things that we're working with the local agencies is that the system is being built similar to the ACTIV database, that as local agencies, you don't enter in information into the ACTIV database. That's at the state level. But one of the things that NASCAS has rolled out recently is a smart forms, which are Excel spreadsheets. And we also have states that have been able to do data transfers into the background tables of the ACTIV database so that you can upload your information without having to do duplicate data entry. We're looking into all of those possibilities, including, I don't think that this would be ready for the March 2019, maybe. It depends on the OIS, the Office of Information Systems. Is that the right acronym? They're the techies over at HHS. Depending on whether or not they can build in logins for local agencies to enter it in, that the state would then approve. So first we're going to get the bare minimum of how the state enters in the information, but we're always looking at how we can make this easier and make technology work for us so it's easier for the local agencies as well. Is there anything that you want to add, Junie?
No, I think that's right. I mean, there is some, Denise, your question was, is it different in different states because it's a block grant? And I think that is the case. The way that the states collect information from the community action agencies under the IS varies. And I would say there will definitely continue to be variance in the way states collect information from agencies. They're all collecting the same information. It's in the annual report, but the format, you know, has been different, whether they use Excel spreadsheets or, you know, some states have a statewide database and the agencies enter in information and the state can just go in and pull the report. So there's lots of different ways. I think what we'll be figuring out in the coming months is, with states, is what process might they use going down the road. They're going to have to fill out Module 1, the admin portion, in March of this coming year, 2017, but the community action agencies will be using this CSBG format. So I would guess that states aren't going to change that a lot right away.
Jeannie, one of the questions that we've had for states with this Module 1 being reported in March is that we know that the purpose of having this in OLDC is that it connects up to the state plan.
Right.
And that there's going to be portions that are auto-populated. So we have states that have 2-year state plans that have just submitted them in that may not have information for this March to be auto-populated.
Right.
So what we've been telling them is that we understand that, and that's part of even more based-in approach within the states. There might be things that they can answer a majority of the questions, but some of them maybe not. Is that?
I think, you know, we are going to have a transition period. We can't pull something from a state plan that doesn't exist. So the functionality of auto-populating an annual report with state plan information is contingent on that state plan information being present. So we'll have to work with the states, and we are in the process right now of working with our IT folks to get that auto-population and the annual report populated. And then we'll do some user testing, and we'll have the states, we'll have a group, just like we did with the state plan, where we had some states do some user testing on the state plan. We'll have them do some user testing on the annual report admin module. And then later on, if we build, not if, but when we build in functionality for the community action agencies to enter in their information to the state, we'll do user testing with the community action agencies too. But that definitely is down the road.
Okay. I just wanted to see, there were a couple of clarifying questions that came in under the Q&A right here. A couple of pieces, making sure that we're clear on state fiscal year versus state program year, some clarity on specific dates for state fiscal years. Take a look at these 3 questions. First, did you mean state fiscal year or state program year? Maybe delineate between the 2.
So state program year, we say state fiscal year, but I think we actually meant state program year, so thank you for that catch. That for CSBG, states are allowed to choose what program period they report on, and per the statute, which I can't quote the exact framework, but it says that the states would report on the 12-month period where the most expenditures of that fiscal year happen, which is why we've been allowed to have these different reporting cycles. So we did need program year. As for the state time frame, I would need to actually see the spreadsheet.
So we're going to pull the spreadsheet back up. Does that help?
Oh, yeah. It would be, you're right, January 1st, 2016 through December 31st, 2016. So we do have a typo on that. We will fix that when we post that. Great eyes. This was very quickly done because we wanted to get this out there, but yes, that will be fixed.
Great. All right, let's go back to the Q&A window. There was something else. And that second question there are the dates for January 1 through December.
That's the one
that you just answered. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there are 13 states that were in a 2-year state plan, right, for fiscal year 16, and then they did a simple amendment to their plan in OLDC. With fiscal year 17, these states now have responses to questions that will auto-populate in Module 1. Any challenges to these states? How will that be taken into consideration in terms of the auto-populate status?
Well, I think we're in good shape. If they responded, if they had answers in their 17-state plan, those will be pulled over. Oh, well, 16, let me see. I didn't get that right. Right, this is sort of what Janae and I were just talking about. Mm-hmm. If you didn't put the information in your 16 plan, we can't pull it in and auto-populate. So we'll have to work with those states on which of the annual report questions they will and won't have to answer.
This really is in reference to the ACSI and the ACSI targets. That is primarily, and possibly the org standards, but those are the primarily 2 areas that you may not have information from 16 that you would report on in this report.
So that was a very complicated question. So let's back it up just a little bit and look a little bit more broadly. In terms of one of the comments that came in between yesterday and today, in terms of training and TA, a number of these components, there is a concern about what are the training and technical assistance needs, what services are going to be provided, what kind of capacity is going to be in the network. And I know we talked yesterday a bit about the state associations and the state offices working together to talk about T and TA. We also talked about the role the RPICs will be playing in terms of trying to coordinate some regional T and TA. Certainly the national partners, the partnership here, we've been funded for a 3-year Center of Excellence, which will develop a myriad of tools and resources, as will NASCAS is one of our key partners, as is CAPWA, as is the Association of Nationally Certified Roma Trainers. So there's a variety of T and TA coming. Thoughts or questions, your comments that you'd like to add to that?
Well, I guess the first thing I'd like to say, Denise, is that you know, we have made some changes, and we have, I think, more than anything, have a hope for changed expectations. We've talked a lot over the course of developing this annual report and refining Roma Next Generation about continuous learning and really doing this because we want more robust results for low-income people and communities. And so while some things, you know, aren't significantly changed, some things are, and that is going to require a different level of training and technical assistance, and that is going to be an all-hands-on-deck kind of moment. And I've been saying to, you know, the 2 of you and others that, you know, we've got to be strategic about every dollar we invest in training and technical assistance up and down the line, and that means OCS has to be strategic. And so to that end, before the end of this calendar year, we're going to be putting out sort of a strategic priorities for training and technical assistance. We think that will help states be more strategic with their investments. Some states have discretionary dollars and have for many, many years done a lot of training and technical assistance. Other states don't have dollars, and that is always a challenge. And then community action agencies are going to have to think about what, if I understand what OCS is going to be able to do, and I know what my state is going to be able to do, then what is left for me to do to sort of meet this new expectation? When will all of that start? Well, it's really already started in many ways. Our tweaking of the RPIC grants, as you mentioned, we've tasked the RPICs with helping each state to develop a state training and technical assistance strategy. With the Center of Excellence Award that you mentioned, Denise, that goes to the partnership, you all will be supporting the RPICs, and I know are already thinking about tools that you can put together. Janae, NASCAS has the data collection and performance management grant, and I know you're in the midst of helping us finalize the annual report, but also thinking about how do we work with Barbara Mooney and her group and think about Roma training differently. So I'd say there are already things underway, but I think in probably January, folks will begin to see also a lot more strategizing and more concrete training and technical assistance opportunities. I think we will be talking with NASCAS and the partnership about how to move from understanding the annual report and commenting on it to actually filling the report out and understanding what all of this really means. So, you know, I think there are things underway. You're going to be seeing a lot more things in the coming months and years. This isn't a sprint. We're sort of changing the way that we do business when it comes to performance management, and that's going to be a process. And we're going to have to all work together in order to get to a different place that I think we've all indicated we want to go, so that we can have the very best high-quality services for low-income people.
So I want to piggyback on that and answer some of the other questions that I'm seeing come up, in that, as Jeannie said, that there's going to be a lot of tools that are going to be developed, that once this passes the OMB process, we'll be able to understand and create the full instructions manual, a data dictionary, and we'll also be able to let you know how we're going to be coding these. That was one of the things that, as we were helping build the packet, that NASCAS was saying, you know, we don't have NPI 1.2a identified here. That's okay, we will build that in. So if you're wondering about how things are going to be labeled for the services and for the NPIs, we'll be working with the network on that. And one thing that Jeannie has mentioned is that we want to be able to pull together a task force that is going to keep advising on what the tools and the training and technical assistance is going to be, that this is a 3-year period, and that we want to ensure that we're fully implementing and understanding it, but that we're learning, and that if there are changes that are going to need to be made for the next go-around, that we're already planning those as well.
I guess I would just add, we're really interested in understanding more the kinds of tools and templates and training opportunities that would resonate for folks. I think, you know, we have so much information in the network. If you look at NASCAS's website or the partnerships or catalogs, there's all kinds of tools and toolkits, and, you know, we can do more of those, but I think what we really need to hear from the network is what kinds of things really resonate for you and what kinds of things that you do need. For example, something that has been mentioned, I think was mentioned to us at both your conferences, was perhaps a template for agencies to use for system procurement. Mm-hmm. That there might be a little white paper that we could put together that would help agencies as they go out into the market do really strategic buying if they're going to look at a new system. That's a great example of something that we think, you know, sounds very helpful, and it pulls on a lot of different levers. If we do that, then it's useful for a whole range of agencies and not just a couple. So if you have ideas or thoughts about those kind of things, I think please let us know. We're very interested in not the usual information dissemination and training, like how do we leverage and be more innovative and sort of strategic moving forward.
I see questions coming in. I've heard this in previous sessions that talk about, boy, the stuff in Module 1 still sure looks like a lot that's in the state plan. And I'm glad that that's the case, right, because that's kind of the intent a little bit, and that is what we talked a little bit about yesterday, is that all these pieces really do fit together, and what gets proposed in the state plan by the state, and that's why agencies and associations really need to be paying attention to, the annual report is the reporting out on what they propose. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I would just say that I think that is us delivering on our commitment that we were going to have accountability at all 3 levels, not just the local level but the state level. So if agencies think about the state plan the same way they think about their community action plan, that is your plan, and you need to be accountable to that plan, and you've got to report at the end about how you did on those, you know, targets or commitments that you made in your planning phase. And so, yes, there is a huge overlap between the state plan and the annual plan, but that is because we have delivered on accountability, I think, and that's not just for the community action agencies, but for the states too.
All right, let's see. Question on the OLDC, past OLDC. Do you envision that community action agencies would put information directly into a national system and eventually either bypass the state, or do you see the state entering in and it bypasses an accumulation? How do you see that playing out?
Well, we're never going to bypass the state CSBG office. That is not going to happen. Right. But we do think that because we have states with that range in capacity and resources, that it would be useful to the states if they could use OLDC to collect the information from their agencies, and that would completely be a state decision. So a state might want the functionality where they could ask their community action agencies to enter some of this annual report into OLDC. What we have said to the developers is that there would have to be an opportunity for the state to review that information, to clean it, and certify it before anybody at the national level at OCS or any contractor actually looked at that information. So that functionality would be organized to respect all the roles and responsibilities that are inherent in the block grant. Some states may already have their own system for collecting that from agencies, and maybe they don't want their agencies to use that because it'll be a new thing and they've already got it covered. And so there'll be ways, we've talked to the developers about extracting information from an existing system and uploading it into OLDC. So I think what we've said to the developers is we have to have multiple options, because we have a number of states and very different structures, and it's going to have to be flexible. So that I think will accommodate what states and agencies want to do.
Right. I did see another question come in that kind of builds off of that. It ties to a slide we showed yesterday, and the one that we've showed now a couple of different times in different venues, that ties everything from the CAP assessment all the way to the congressional report. Mm-hmm. And those of you who haven't seen that slide, it really talks about how all the pieces of the Roma cycle and all that we do ties all the way from the very first moment we start our community needs assessment to assess what's going on in the community, that gets fed into the agency's strategic plan and vision for the direction of the CAP agency, that then derives from that a CAP plan that gets submitted to the state, right, because that's your plan. And then that gets funneled into the state plan, because the state plan, and those timing pieces don't always fit together. I think that the slide we showed was kind of a broad flow, high 35,000-foot scope in terms of how CAP plans may feed into a state plan, and then the state plan feeds into the annual report that gets fed back to OCS, which eventually filters into the congressional report to Congress about CSBG. So the idea there is that every step along the way is critically important. The data from the very first get-go, when you're assessing those communities, when you're talking to customers and they identify that violence in a particular neighborhood is of a critical mass, and the CAP agency decides in a strategic plan to address violence, and in their CAP plan they talk about the strategies they're going to be doing, and in the state plan there's pieces there that talk about how CAPs are going to be spending CSBG and other resources to achieve particular goals, and then you get your NPIs in the annual report that document what you've done to impact violence in your community, and that gets reported up to Congress. So does that flow easily with everything we do? No. But again, it's a 35,000-foot conceptualization of how these pieces, they're not individual components. Yeah. And I think for a long time we do needs assessment training, and then we do strategic planning training, and then we train people on how to do data collection, and then we have our Roma training. And for me, I think it's how we tie all those pieces together into a whole system. Anything you'd want to add to that?
I think that, for such a long time, Roma was just talked about as being a reporting system, and that's not the case. And so for us to visualize that your needs assessment helps you identify which programs you're going to operate, at the local agency level in your community, that is approved in the CAP plan for the state that you then report on. It shows that performance management framework. It shows the analysis, the implementation, the review, and then the reporting, and that it's all tied together. So it's not just a reporting requirement that you just have to do just to get the funds. It's part of who we are, and it's how we tell our story.
Great. I'm trying to monitor the questions, so if you can't figure out why I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at our questions up on the screen. So question came in about Head Start. There are now 3,472 new reporting standards for Head Start, probably not quite that many, but how does our work here under the National Performance Indicators and the org standards, how does all that align with the Head Start program performance standards? We know that a lot of CAPs do run Head Start, and we know the Head Start performance standards are a new piece that the CAP agencies with Head Start are going to have to deal with. Any synergies there that you'd want to talk about?
Well, I wish I had spent more time brushing up on all the new Head Start, but I've been a little busy with CSBG, so I haven't done that. But as we were revising the NPIs over the last year, we certainly did try to look at the Head Start, you know, I wouldn't say standards, but the Head Start measures that get reported on as part of Head Start. I will not say that we, you know, we're perfect in getting those crosswalked exactly right, but we tried to make things match up where we could. So there are some NPIs, I think, that folks may sort of recognize if they're Head Start experts. There may be some other important Head Start measures that we didn't capture in the NPIs, and I would certainly say that with the other flexibility that agencies can add those. And I would say that our effort to try to crosswalk other key federal programs was not just limited to Head Start. We also looked at WIOA and tried to think about how they were measuring performance. We looked at LIHEAP, weatherization, some other things. So I would not want anybody to think that we matched this all up perfectly, but we did try to be cognizant of some of those other measures. So I know, Janae, your staff worked really hard on that.
We did. What we did is that we interviewed the network, we talked about it, we worked with the Roma trainers, we looked at the section F in the IS, which talks about the predominant funding that local agencies receive, to see what other reporting systems are required. We know that in the community action agencies, you usually have 5 to 7, even more different databases and reporting systems. And because CSBG collects information on all of it, we wanted to ensure that we were in line with it. So we absolutely did our best to ensure that if it wasn't exactly the same, it was something that you could take those and roll it up, and that CSBG wasn't more restrictive than what was being reported in other federal funding sources, and state as local resources as well.
And a follow-up came in the Q&A window about in terms of fitting into either the Roma cycle and or the TNTA big puzzle. Definitely fits into the TNTA side. The Center of Excellence is called to work closely with the Office of Head Start and the regional offices to do a crosswalk, but even more importantly, to make sure we're maximizing TNTA resources. We know Head Start has the Centers of Excellence, and how can we use and work with those groups to make sure we're maximizing TNTA resources.
Let me just say one other thing about that, Denise, that people might not be thinking of, but if you think about the focus and the vision of Head Start now, which is to provide the highest quality services to in early childhood that can be provided. And, you know, I have seen a lot of things that our office at ACF has produced to try to get folks to use Head Start data to improve. And I think that aligns exactly with what we're saying about the CSBG or community action data overall. We have to all be in a place where we use our data to improve and to do better. And I think that matches up on a big picture scale with where Head Start is and where Head Start is going.
A couple of questions that have come in on modules 3 and 4, and then there's another question that came in around community pieces. I'll start with this question here about modules 3 and 4. Given that module 3 is about community level work and module 4 is about family, thank you, okay. A question here, is there any thought or concern that if you report that an unemployment rate is something in your community level project that you're reporting in module 3, and then you report that you're doing job training and such in module 4, Are you trying to tie those things together, not tie those things together? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So I think it's really important to go back to some of our early Roma training, and that around community work, what you're looking at there is change at the community level. So oftentimes that's very systemic, policy changes, creating resources, adding resources. You know, some of that work is very easy to understand. Increasing housing units increases affordable housing. The work on individual and family that's in Module 4 is individual level change. So I may pay to have somebody go to training and they get, you know, an apprenticeship certification. The very different levels of change. And the changes in individual and family in Module 4 generally will not add up and reflect in the community level Module 3 stuff. The strategies that you implement or the services that you implement are very different for community level work than individual. So those are not intersecting. Now, you as an agency may say we have a problem in our community with transportation, and we may have a strategy to address that on a big scope community level, and we may give people bus passes or gas cards. So as an agency, you may be implementing different services and strategies that get at the same problem, but we will not be looking to see how those sort of match up or link, because community level change is very different from family or individual level change. And, you know, agencies pursue those different levels of change depending on many, many different things, the resources that are already available in their community, where their expertise lies. And that is, those decisions are not for any of us at the Office of Community Services to second guess. Those are things for local agencies and boards of directors to grapple with. They are closest to the problem. They are the best deciders of what needs to be done based on their needs assessment.
I think that the connections that need to be made, because they're so locally driven, and as Jeannie said, and even as Denise said, we start with the community needs assessment. So as a community action agency, you address what you're going to do, whether it be a community level change or individual family level change. The only place that you would really make those connections, if you wanted to talk about that, would actually be in Module 1, where we've continued some of the innovative stories, which would be traditionally in the CSBG Section D, where we talk about how the state assures that there's linkages and coordination. But that's up to you to describe the whole process of your community action agency and how you have decided, because it's local determination, how you're going to attack the problems in your communities and how you're going to address them. So it's not, you can't do a one-to-one correlation between the data reported in Module 3 and 4, but you can talk about the connections in a narrative form in Module 1.
And one question that came earlier, it might be in the chat window, I don't remember, but it had to deal with the community level reporting as well, and it talked a little bit about when you talk about the change in rate, how do you calculate that? Maybe we could take a look.
Barbara, I'd actually like for you to answer this one to start at least. It was a question on how do you report and what is included in the % increase of people with low income to support CSBG eligible entities' delivery of service and or implementation of strategies to address the conditions of poverty in identified communities. Now this is where we would be providing more information and examples in the instructions. But Barbara, can you give us a little idea of how you would do that?
We're, in terms of rate changes in general, we have to have a rate to start with, and so that's one of the challenges in the baseline data. So if we have an existing rate of participation, then we would know how that would be collected, and then we would be able to identify the change in the rate by there's a formula where you see the difference in the rates. And that'll be part of the auto calculation in the document. But I think part of the question is how that rate gets established in the first place. Where do you go to look for a rate that would be indicative of that kind of information.
Thanks, Barbara. And if there are other questions on that, please keep them coming in. We're sorting through the number of questions that have come in, so thank you for putting so many into the window here. Keep them coming.
And I think part of the question was, how do you define support? What kind of support would be calculated in this? You know, and for us, we talk about throughout the report, people with low incomes, how they support community action agency through volunteering efforts, through other initiatives, through community fairs, not sure, there's a lot.
Donations.
Donations. Mm-hmm.
Well, a question also came in bumped up against this that talks about why are we collecting and reporting community indicators that are already collected by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, for instance, or the Bureau of Vital Statistics at a statewide level when you can get teen pregnancy rates and things like that from the state at the county level. And I don't think it's necessarily that Module 3 is asking us to report up all of these indicators. It's like, it's basically, and tell me if I'm interpreting this right, that if I'm doing a teen pregnancy prevention initiative, community-wide, community effort to decrease teen pregnancy rates, it's not that I have to report teen pregnancy rate as my measure. I may choose to put that in as my measure. So it's not that I'm informing the state that the teen pregnancy report or rate is X. I'm saying that as part of my project, we've identified the teen pregnancy prevention rate as X, and next year when I report, or 2 years from now when I report on this initiative, it is now Y. And the data sheets will auto-calculate that I decrease it by 2 percentage points, and it'll calculate the percentage of what that decrease actually represents. So not everybody has to report on teen pregnancy rates. You're only using that as an indicator if you're choosing to work in that particular community impact level.
And that actual information would be how you get your baseline information. So if you can get those rate changes, that's what you start with, and then as a community action agency, if you choose that that's something that you want to work on, you identify how much you want to decrease that, and then you report on what actually happened. So that's how it all fits together.
And there's also the issue of different community levels. So if you're only working on a school district, say a one school district project, you would want to identify the rates of teen pregnancy in that district, and then you could compare them with the state rate. It may be that you picked that for this particular school district because it was much higher, or so that's also a factor.
And I will say that as the Teen Pay Partners, we intend, if the rates do remain, that we will be providing a wide range of technical assistance to help agencies and states be able to interpret this information correctly and in a way that's effective. So it can be a confusing element, which is why we initially said there were some concerns about it, perhaps. But we will talk about how do you do it, what does that change in rate mean, and what it doesn't mean are going to be critical elements. And we'll be working with Barbara and with NASCAS and CAPLAW to make sure that the network has the best information possible.
And even that includes where to find what the rates are and how to get good, easy tools to be able to use that moving forward. So absolutely, there would be a lot more that would have to occur that we're planning for.
And I think just emphasizing, Denise said it in the beginning of her answer to this question, is that you only pick an indicator if it's appropriate to measure the work you're doing. Mm-hmm. And if you are a community action agency and you are working to increase affordable housing in your community, then the unit, increasing affordable housing units is the perfect measure. But if you're doing something else that maybe you're involved with 10 other partners and there's no good measure on the NPI list, then you need to create your own measure for the work that you're doing. And we really, you know, I think that has been a point that has been confusing to some all the way along, but there is no intention to require any particular NPI. And that just goes to the core principle. Our core work just would not allow that. So.
And speaking of our core work, a question came in about the theory of change. Mm-hmm. And I think we've been talking for quite a while how that theory of change exemplifies, describes, puts into graphic form the core of our work. A question came in, has this theory of change been finalized? And if so, can we use it? And I would add, if it hasn't been confirmed or approved, can we still use it? Thoughts?
So I think an agency can absolutely use it to get their work.
Exactly
Everybody should be operating on a theory of change when they do things. So, and we feel like that theory of change that has been put out in the network is a big enough theory of change that much of the work that community action agencies are doing now or will do in the future easily fits in that. I would say that it has not been formally adopted. I guess there's some question about what that process looks like, and that I think we have to have mutual agreement across the network that we're satisfied with it. That's sort of the adoption. I think that we've talked with NASCAS recently. Some of the comments that we got on the theory of change during the last comment period, there were people who made comments about the theory of change even though it's not a part of the annual report package. We want to go back through and look at those and see if any of those suggestions need to drive some changes. NASCAS has sort of drafted that up as a working document. We think it could benefit from some graphic expertise, but we don't want to do that until we're sort of, as a network, pretty satisfied that it can represent us well. I feel like we're very close, and that when I have used that, so if you're thinking about using it, you should go ahead. I've been using it when I meet with individuals that I need to talk to about community action and CSBG. It resonates for people. It brings a lot of things together and helps them make sense. And we do all sort of operate in a pretty complicated, community action isn't the easiest thing to understand and explain sometimes. And I think that theory of change does a pretty good job of articulating who we are and what we do and what we want in the world. And so I would say if it speaks to you as it is, use it. But know that we probably will have a final version that's good graphically, all the words are right and all that kind of thing that will be coming out shortly.
I don't think it's going to change drastically, that the visual representation of it, that a lot of what we did is that NASCAS staff started to do some of the graphics. And we're not graphic designers. We did our best to try to do the bricks, but you can't quite see it. So we will be working with a graphic designer, and we have done some really great sophisticated clarifications and language changes. So I think that it's going to be enhanced, but I don't think it's going to be drastically different.
Well, it couldn't be drastically different because that theory of change is built on our history, our experience, what we value, our principles, reflects the performance management framework. And so, we can wordsmith a few things and we can put prettier pictures, but I think the whole theory of it is pretty right on.
Well, and I think we have a toolkit for developing a local theory of change. Is that correct?
That's something we've talked about.
We've talked about doing. So,
well, and we have worked on that. The NASCAS project has worked on that, and it's part of really what we plan to do with OSCO going forward.
And I must say, I had a conversation with the National Foundation 2 weeks ago. Several of us were doing a meeting with one, and they asked us about how we provide service in our network, and being able to talk about having a national theory of change resonated with the funder right out of the. They understood it, they conceptually got, because that is what funders are talking about right now. For the good or for the bad, it is what it is. And having a theory of change that you can say, yes, we do. We are a sophisticated network, and we understand our foundation, why we do it, how we do it, and what's going to come out of it. And here it is. It was an impactful part of our conversation. So. Keep an eye, we'll get you out that local theory of change piece. I think that's going to be a great element for local agencies as well as state level, regional level. A lot of ways to use that, so feel free to use the components as you see fit.
So Jeannie, we had a question about Module 1 and the change that Module 1 would be reported by the states not only this March, but that everything in Module 1 will now be on a federal fiscal year. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yep. So I think that this is important. I know that it is a change. I have filled out the CSBG IS myself, so I know what it allows flexibility based on the way the state operates as far as time frame. But we did make a decision, and really that was an OCS decision, to ask that Module 1 be filled out on a federal fiscal year so that it can be easily crosswalked with the state's grant award. So there's a lot of information in there about planned dollars. Actually, in the annual report, there's information about actual dollars as compared to planned. And when we linked up the annual report and the state plan needs to be on a federal fiscal year because we are awarding money to a state on a federal fiscal year. When we talk about the state passing through 90% to community action agencies or being able to use no more than 5% of our admin, that is for the grant award that operates on the federal fiscal year. So we felt like just for program integrity and, again, accountability, it would be easier to look at results in the annual report and connect them up to the state plan if we were very clear that it was all on a federal fiscal year. We are not requiring the state to push that requirement down to the community action agencies in the other modules because I felt like, and I personally made this decision, that could be too burdensome to the community action agencies and the state to have to convert dollars and outcomes to a federal fiscal year when that might not be how the state operates. So I hope this works. I think it will. I think we may have to do some good training with states, but I think in the end it may increase our program integrity and may streamline some of our messaging in the other reports that we do down the road. Also, as a state person, I knew that I had to convert from a federal to a state year all the time. And it's 6 months in this year and 6 months in that year, and you add them together. And so most state people are pretty savvy at doing that because most states do operate on a different period than the federal fiscal year. So I think states can do it. We'll give you a lot of support along the way, and I think it may pay off for us down the road to have made that change. And this was the time to do it.
And it is one of the areas that we have heard a lot of concern from our state members about how this is going to connect, disconnect, what this is going to look like. One thing that I will say is that the trend that we've been seeing throughout the years is that we have had states change their program years that they can select to be modified. And in some cases, in recent years, we've actually had some states who got away from the federal fiscal year because of the fact of continuing resolution and not getting the money immediately. So I think that having the flexibility to still be able to choose what you do for the local agencies works. Quick history, it's been challenging for us when we talk about the data. It is a block grant for 1 year that can be spent over 2 years. And sometimes we get questions as to, well, why are you carrying over so much? You know, do you not need this full amount, which isn't the case. We've been able to use the data to say that we spend the same amount each year, whether it's a mixture of 2 years. And so this is one of the attempts, I think, to help streamline that and clarify that and have those conversations. But it is going to require us to really look at, are there any unintended consequences by making this change that we can fix with clarifications or instructions?
We've had a new administration question come in a couple of different ways from a couple of different folks. I want to make sure we have some time for this at the end. But I want to circle back here because I know we're due to go until about 30 minutes here after. We just have a few more minutes. But we had a couple more questions come in around the community level work, and I'm going to try to clump them all together. And if you keep your questions coming, we'll try to do maybe some stuff. Partnership's going to do another webinar on Monday about our perspective on the annual report and what we're thinking that we might submit to OMB, and we'll send it out to the network, so you'll have another chance perhaps to dialogue a little bit just with us, though, so you'll just have our opinion, not the gurus added, certainly. But here are some questions that have come in around the community status piece. First of all, I want to make sure everyone is aware in the package of page number 33, it's called the Community Initiative Status Form. A question came in, do we have to do one of these for all of our community work? And I think we've been pretty clear that you use this for those big macro community level projects that you're doing, and we don't believe CAPs are going to be doing more than a couple at most of these in any 1 or 2 or 3 particular cycles. So I think you have to be cautionary about what you're going to do and report on a community level change. Can we see what services are provided in these community-level initiatives that then roll up to these community-wide outcomes? That'll be interesting because there are elements in here. So on this form, you do talk about the types of strategies you're going to be implementing. So as this gets reported over the next, let's look 5 years out, there'll be stories that we can tease out of the data that gets submitted. And the third question that came in around the community piece, if it's also varied, and we look at all the following pages after page 33, how does all that roll up? If I'm defining a school district versus a county versus a neighborhood, I know we've talked internally here about, well, it's not all going to get rolled up that way, but we talk a lot about the family stuff all getting rolled up. A, am I accurate on my two first interpretations of the use of this form? And then the third part would be the roll-up question.
So let me see if I can answer some of those, and then Janae may want to add in. You will use that community status for projects where the agency, has identified that they're trying to pursue a key outcome. So I think about a lot of community action agencies I know, perhaps they're doing some housing development, so there's a certain number of units they're creating, so they would fill that out. They would report on housing created. They may have 2 or 3 other initiatives where they're working on more complex problems with partners that have clear outcomes. They would fill that out. They would not fill that out for the community effort where they get people together on a monthly basis and they share information in the community about what everybody's doing. That is not the kind of thing that so I think there are I think in training we can make it very clear that if you are pursuing community level change and you have identified outcomes to come out of that, then that is the kind of stuff that we want in Module 3. And your last assumption, I'm trying to think what it was.
Well, let me talk about the status page too.
Oh, roll up. Yes, sorry.
So the status page actually came about from a request from the network that as we were looking at our community outcome measures that we traditionally gathered from the CSBGIS, that it didn't show all of the work that you put into getting that one change, that one initiative. That in many cases, it seemed like we weren't being as effective in our communities because we didn't have that much to report on. And so the network said, it takes us sometimes 5 years to make that change. We have a lot of staff time and effort that is going into that work, and we want to be able to report on that as well. That we cannot be expected to change something overnight. And so we wanted to honor that and honor the amount of time and effort that it takes so that we can educate people, especially as we have administration changes, that if you're really going to have an impact on a community, it will not happen overnight. It may not happen in a year, that it may take 2 years, but that's the dedication that it takes. And so that was a way of consolidating in a quick and easy way for you to report and for you to also share with your boards and for others to say, this is what we're doing in our community. But as Denise said, you're not going to have a lot of these measures, that there are going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 measures that you're going to be working on.
So I think the roll-up question is really important because in the family and individual, we are counting individuals or we are counting families, and we are very clear, we have apples and we can add up apples. On the community side, we may have, we're working on community. Communities can be defined so many different ways. You may be working at a school district, you might be working at a county, the world is getting bigger all the time, you might be working on a region. You can't add those up and that have any meaning. So what we are envisioning is that we will, can't just add up all the numbers, we have to look at how we can articulate how many community action agencies do we have working on X? How many community action agencies do we have working successfully to address this problem? And we'll be able to articulate something different than we've ever been able to articulate before, but we won't just be rolling up all these community level NPIs and reporting a bunch of high numbers. So I think that's really important and we want people to understand. I had a comment about the elections, Denise, I did want to make if you think we have time. So I know, you know, folks are, you know, we've seen several questions about how all this might be impacted by the election. And there are two things I would want to say about that. I could say a lot of things, but I'm only going to say two things here today. The first is that, you know, this is recognize that this process doesn't change overnight. When we talk about the phase-in, you know, for any state and its agencies that are sort of operating on a federal fiscal year, you know, you're not going to start this reporting till fiscal year 18. That would be October of 2017 that you would start collecting data. That data would never see the light of day until March of 2019, on the national level at least, because the program year is going to end in September of 2018, and there are several months to put that information together and get it to OCS. So just think about that in relation to what we're dealing with in the election, is that it's not like there's going to be new data for the new administration to see in February, you know, and I think that's really important to see. So we have time to sort of understand what's happening and to figure out. That's one point. The second point, and I feel like this is much of a bigger issue, is that all of this work, this heavy lifting that this network has been doing since really 2011, really perfectly positions us to be able to say to a new administration, we have an accountability process and system that is not surpassed by any other federal block grant. We have local accountability. We have state accountability. We have federal accountability. We have a performance management framework that's made up of local organizational standards, state accountability measures, and federal accountability measures. That is a wonderful message that this network can send. This network can say that we have looked at ourselves and reflected on our experience and our history and our ability and reinvigorated our network, and we are ready for an assignment. We take very seriously the needs of this country, and we are ready to fight them. If we do not use this work and message it that way, it's a missed opportunity for this network. So I hope everyone is thinking. And that's not just me or Janae or Denise or David who needs to be saying that. Everybody out in their local areas needs to be making sure that all of their local officials understand the hard work that we've been doing, why we did it, and what it positions this network to do. So I think that's just critical for everybody to be pondering and strategizing on.
And I will say that working with OCS and Jeannie in particular, that you have been really trying to ensure that you leave your office well prepared for whoever's going to come in, so that you already have a lot of these processes built in, that it's built by the network, that it's reviewed by the network, and that it's going to be beneficial for us. That you've even started to talk about the TNTA plan for how OCS is going to use the funds moving forward, so that you can have a strategic plan adopted that would be something that somebody could follow. So it is not the first time that we've had a change in administration. I think that this is an unusual area for a lot of us, but we have weathered this because we tell the story of what we're doing. And that for many years I've had people say, can't you just get us down to a couple measures, and that's what we report on. Well, you're so diverse. You do so much work out there that we want to tell the whole story of everything. So it's okay, and it's been okay for many years, that we've only had, in some cases, a handful of agencies reporting on an indicator, because that is only what they can do, and that's unique to them, but it's still a powerful story for your local area. And it's why Congress has really helped support us, and that we've heard how positive a response we've been able to get from Congress on the organizational standards. You know, and that the state accountability measures and the federal accountability measures, those resonate, and that this is that end product of tying that all together and being able to do that full report. So I think that there's a lot of benefits. I know that there's always concern with how data could be used against us, but you have leaders in place, you have a network in place that's sophisticated enough to know how to tell this story and to keep telling that story across the board.
And so November 30th, we will be asking the network, if you feel that you would like to submit comments to OMB, that email address is up on the NASCAS website. It will be up on ours if it's not up already. We'll talk again on Monday about the partnership's perspective on this. And what Jeannie and Janae said is right. This has been a huge lift, but we could not be better positioned to take on an assignment from the administration to help families across this country. All parties like to hear the word accountability. And boy, we knew we were already going through more hoops than most other nonprofit and public entities out there, right? CAP agencies, we have to lift on all levers. These might be a few more levers, but this is gonna help us, just as the standards did on the Hill. These accountability measures and Roma Next Gen and all these new pieces will help us with this new presidential administration as well as the new Congress. So it's a big lift. We've gotten this far. Let's get it across the finish line in a way that is beneficial. As I've said to you in the field, no matter what comes out the other side, we will be here to work with agencies and states as a group to make sure that we help the whole network be ready to meet this challenge. And I am very confident that we will do that. So,
for all of the questions that we didn't get to, I want to let you know that as we've done in the past, NASCAS will work with OCS in the partnership to produce a frequently asked questions document that we'll share with the network, that we'll post on the website, anything that we can do to clarify. I want to say that as you get prepared to submit your comments, that you let us know things that will, if there are any things that will absolutely not work, that this isn't the time to nitpick a certain word here or there, that this is kind of a big picture effort to really talk about these are the areas that we have. But also, if there are things that you like, put that in there. It is always good for us to know what is actually going to work, what you're excited about. So please don't hesitate to share any of those questions, comments, concerns. We're not going away. We're here to clarify anything. It's a lot of information, but it's been scaled back a lot as well, so it's very similar to what you're currently doing.
and just as a promo, we will be getting an e-news out today or early tomorrow. 2 o'clock Eastern on Monday will be a partnership webinar, not a national partner webinar. It'll be our chance to share with you our analysis of this new package, how the comments from the network and our comments from our organization and our board were received and incorporated or not incorporated, and what we think might be included in our 30-day comment letter back to OMB. Because we do plan on submitting a letter. We'll be talking about, certainly it's the positive stuff. We see a lot of positive things here, and we'll certainly be talking about the things that, you know, we still have some questions about. So thank you very much for being part of today and all of these webinars. And go to NASCAS's website, download those 4 30-minute webinars to get the deep dive on each module. So with that, any last comments?
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everybody. Take care.